Hello, and thank you for listening in. Today we are going to be going through a demonstration of the LumApps Mosaic. We will also be looking at what can be configured for the Mosaic and what features and functionalities are offered for you. The Mosaic widget displays visual context and text in a responsive and dynamic masonry layout. Users are able to declare the importance of each story by assigning one of various sizes to each item, as well as order, and all items are then automatically arranged for the best fit. Of course, these stories can be arranged manually by the user to fit however they desire. The Mosaic widget has different style options and customizable features to best match your community's visual identity and brand. So you can see here up at the top we have our Mosaic widget with a bunch of different stories. Some have images, some are more a flat color, some have titles and subtitles, some have different colored text. This Mosaic widget really allows you to do whatever is required to match your branding guidelines. Now let's take a look at the configuration for the Mosaic. You can see it's broken out into easy to configure sections, and those sections are stories, themes, categories, advanced settings, fonts, and migrate configuration. Let's take a look at the first section within the Mosaic configuration. This section is titled Stories, and this is where you actually enter the stories that will display within your Mosaic. You can add as many stories as you'd like by clicking Add Story. Once you have stories added, it's easy to drag and drop or rearrange the story position just by holding down and grabbing it and dragging it to where you want it to go. You can easily delete a story by clicking the delete icon. And you can also expand down just to see a little bit more of a summary of your Mosaic story and what it actually is, so you know you're editing the right one. Let's say we want to edit this story and actually look at how a story is configured. You can choose between 3 different styles, so classic, fade, or flat. If we look behind us, you can see that this here is your flat story. It doesn't have an image, it's just a flat color. This color is dependent on what color or theme you select from here. In this case, we chose stone. The fade, or classic, looks somewhat similar. However, you can see the classic here. It has some opacity behind the subtitle and text color. And the fade is somewhat similar, but it is a little more opaque. You could select between different sizes, so small, tall, wide, or large. Right now, all of our stories are set to small to have a nice condensed look. You can also associate categories with your stories. These categories must be predefined, and we'll get down into that section in just a couple minutes. Once you have categories predefined, you could select a category to be associated with your story, or you don't have to associate one at all, right? So this example, this story that we could see back here, we did select the news category to be associated with it. The color, again, is where you select what theme you want to be applied to that story, and we'll get down in the theming section in just a minute. This link is an area for you to enter a link as to where you'd like this story to take the user when they click on it, and do you want it to open in a new window, so that can be configured here. The display area is where you actually set the title and subtitle text if desired. You don't have to have text, but you could as well, whatever best aligns with your branding needs. This link here is where you actually link to what image you want to display in your story, again, if you want an image to display. Right? If you don't want an image to display, you may not pick classic or fade, but you'd pick a flat story and just have a color display. Once you're done making any changes to your story or adding your new one, you always want to make sure to click Save Story, and you can see that it gets updated and is still listed out here. Now let's take a look at the theme section. Here's where you could set the theming for your stories. As mentioned before, only one theme can be applied to each story. You can add as many color themes as you want just by clicking to add a new color theme. When you add a new color theme, you'll be prompted to enter a theme name as well as a story color, right? So that story color refers to if you have a flat, fade, or classic story. In this example right here that I'm kind of mousing over, this is a flat story, but you see that story color behind it. You could have a story border color as well, or you could just leave it empty. In this case, we chose to leave it empty. Then you also can set the title and text color, right? So you could see in this variation here, I do have my title and text color set to be black, my title and subtitle text color. I also can set the category band color, right? So this news story, we saw that it was a dark purple and the category text color was white as we set here, right? This light blue theme was applied to this story. Now let's take a look at the categories section within configuration. You can have multiple categories. To simply add a new category, you click add category, and here's where you fill out your category name. So in this instance, I could call it attention. And then I could select from preset icons, upload some custom icons, or use an SVG file to upload icons as well. If I set preset icons, I can search for different icons that are already available to me. So for example, I might search for bullhorn. You can see that once I select it, that's my icon. It gives you a preview. You also can take a look at the icon guide to see what's available. You can see here that the way that these categories appear, as mentioned before, when we associate with a story, is just as a bar across. It may also be a bubble. This is where you can see the name of your category as well as the category icon associated with it. Now let's take a look at the advanced settings area within your Mosaic configuration. Your first two settings are on paddings and if you'd like to enable some cell structure paddings. This just helps keep the padding clean between each of the stories. Next is the columns count. The columns count refers to how many stories do you want to go across before they move on to another line. So in this example, we have it set to 3, so therefore there are 3 stories going across. The next option is the height. So what do you want the overall height of your mosaic to be in terms of pixels, right? This is a number that you could just simply enter in or change. What do you want the hover effect to be? This hover effect is what we saw in the beginning of the video when we were hovering over the stories. As a default, it's set to focus, so it only focuses or shows the story that you're hovering over, while the rest are grayed out. Opaque is more of like an opaque backdrop behind each story as you select or hover over it. The next option is rounded corners. So what size do you want these stories to be in terms of the rounded corners? Right now we have it set to small, but you could also change it to none, medium, or large. Please note that this does apply to all the stories within your mosaic. Next is the gutter. So in terms of pixels, what do you want that gutter to be? The gutter is just referring to this white space between each of the stories. So right now we have it set to 10, but we could always increase it or decrease it if we wanted to. You do also have the option to turn on font smoothing if desired. The next set of items that you can configure are for really a mobile or narrow display of the mosaic. So when it's in a narrow column or it's looked at a mobile view, how do you want it to be displayed? Do you want it to be displayed as a slider where all the slides rotate through? Or would you rather have it be a list that you can just scroll down and see each story? If you choose a slider, you get to set the slider interval. So how long do you want that slide to be up before it goes to the next one? As well as the transition. So how much time do you actually want it to take to translate or transition to the next slide? This setting here, title and subtitle alignment, is also applied to all of your stories. So do you want your titles and subtitles to be left, center, or right? Right? So that's referring to something like improve engagement, help employees thrive. Implementation tools. Those are the titles and subtitles that would be affected by this change. You also could enable to allow a custom background color, and if desired, once you enter it, you could just put in your custom background color in terms of hexadecimal values. The last option here is what we call opacity for the classic and fade styles. So as we mentioned before, stories can be selected with a classic or a fade style. This just really refers to how opaque do you want the background color to be in these stories, right? So for example, our implementation tools does have a classic style applied, and we have it set to a higher opacity so you can see through it. If I wanted to make it so it's not as see-through, I could lower the opacity, or I could even increase it and make it more see-through. And again, that can be done for classic and fade style stories, and any changes made here will be applied to all stories that have that classic or fade style selected. Let's take a look at the font section within the configuration for Mosaic. You could see that you have the availability to set a font for all the titles within your mosaic and stories, all the subtitles, as well as the categories, right? So that news that we were seeing behind here. Your options range from basic font, so you could enter and select a basic font and select what's out of the box. You could also select a Google font and then search for what Google font you may want. So in this example, I'll pick that. Or you can also upload a custom font using any one of these file formats. Once you have your font type selected, so for example, I'll select sans serif, you then have the ability to select your font weight and style as well as size. And again, this can be done for the title, the subtitle, and the categories within your mosaic. Now let's take a look at the migrate configuration section. Let's say we already have a mosaic configure that we really love and could be applied elsewhere throughout our site. Maybe we don't want to have to go back through and reconfigure everything again. So what we could do is we could navigate over to the copy current configuration area, click to copy this code to our clipboard, make sure you store it in a safe place, and then navigate elsewhere in the site where you'd like to paste in this mosaic code, click add new configuration, paste and apply the code there. What this does is once that code is successfully applied, you'll have that configuration of the mosaic already there, so you don't have to go through and reconfigure the whole thing. Instead, you could just make minor changes as needed. Thank you for listening in today. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out.